on my lane, you all on my lane. You ain't overlooked, so get out the way. I gave you the book, I gave you the game. The boy gotta cook, the boy got a flame, Serving in the kitchen like you Nino. Plenty pitching, whipping different flavors like a bistro. Kicking, dipping, flipping, keep it hunting like a C note. Switching, keep it pimping every single place that he go. I got it. Lathan got the flame, Lathan got the flame. Boy, you know the name, get up out the way. Lathan got the flame, Lathan got the flame. Stay up out the kitchen if you ain't the one that's whipping, huh? Hey, yo, Lathan, man, cook them boys up something real quick, man.
What's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. Now today we got the most incredible crock pot roast. So the first step we want to do is we want to get our mise en place together, and that is our onions first. So we got our onions, and this is a classic mirepoix without the celery. I didn't use celery for this recipe. A lot of people don't, but so we got our onions, and I just diced them up real big, and I kind of made our carrots the same size because we're gonna let these cook in a crock pot with the roast, and we're still going to keep these vegetables at the end. So cut them kind of thick so you can still use them at the end and they won't completely disintegrate during the cook time. And we're going to kind of create like a steam rack inside our crock pot, and this is what I do to get that 360 heat to go completely around the roast. So I stack my mirepoix at the very bottom, which is my carrots and onions. I put them at the very bottom, and then I season with a little salt. Now, you know I got a love-hate relationship with pepper, so I didn't put any pepper in this recipe, but you're free to do that. Next step we're going to do after we get that set up, we're going to go ahead and start on our roast. And you want to get that thing completely dry. Make sure you pat it completely dry. And also, set your roast out about an hour before cook time. It's just easy to work with, and it brings it up to room temperature, so it kind of cooks even as well. But we're going to cook this for a long time, so if you just take it out the refrigerator, it still shouldn't matter. Especially the cook time we're going to cook on it. So once we get this step here, we're going to go ahead and put a little oil on there, and this is just our glue to hold our seasonings on during the searing process. So I just went on with a little grapeseed oil, and then after the grapeseed oil, I went on with a big pinch of salt. Now this meat could take a lot of salt because it's a big piece of meat, but I didn't over salt because my next step I'm using some Slap Your Mama, or you can use your favorite Creole seasoning, but I did go on with some Slap Your Mama right after the salt, so kind of balanced it out. So, and that's giving us a lot of different spices, but I didn't put that much on, so you don't have to worry about it being too spicy. But when it comes to seasoning, you guys, it's completely up to you how you want to season it. This is not a recipe. It's pretty much like a little guideline. You can omit things and you can keep things. It's completely up to you. After we got our slap your mom on there, we're going on with some granulated onion. And then you know that's my little trinity. The Slap Your Mama, granulated onion, and granulated garlic. But we're going with some granulated onion just to give that good sweet note. And then after that, we're going on with some granulated garlic. Now you can use fresh garlic with this as well, but if you're going to sear it, I recommend not using fresh garlic, because what's going to happen is you're going to put on the exterior of the protein there, and it's going to burn. So that's why I use granulated garlic. But like I said, it's completely up to you. Make sure you pat that in, and then we're going to flip it over, and we're going to season the backside exactly the same, in the same layers as well. So once we get that backside seasoned, we're going to go ahead and pat the sides down with the excess seasoning that's on the board. You want to get all that seasoning around that whole piece of meat. Like I said, it's a big piece of meat. It could take a lot of seasoning. You're going to need a lot of seasoning to make it flavorful as well. So the next step is, this is what separates like the restaurant cooks and the chefs from home cooks. Once we get our roast seasoned, instead of placing it directly in the crock pot, we sear it. And when you sear it, you're locking in them juices. Also, you're doing the Maillard reaction, which is caramelizing the natural sugars in the protein. And when you do that, it equals to more flavor. So go ahead and sear it up. You see mine look a little crusty, but that's what you want, because, man, this thing, you want as much flavor as you can possibly put in this thing. A lot of you know pot roast sometimes can just be boring and blah, but when you season it really well, you know that this thing is going to take on a lot of good flavors. So the next step we're going to do is we're going to actually add our pot roast to our crock pot. And once we get that pot roast added to that crock pot, you don't need a ton of liquid for this, because as you cook the roast, it's going to extract its own liquid and fat. So I just added a cup of chicken stock, and then I added a bouquet garni of a lot of thyme and 1 sprig of rosemary. That's my preference. But like I said, you can adjust that any way you want. Go ahead and pop that top on it. We're going to let it go on low for 6 hours. And you see how much liquid it made. Like I said, you don't need a lot of liquid initially. A lot of people mess up by putting a lot of liquid into their crock pot, and then their meat is just swimming and it's flavorless. So this is exactly how you want to do it. Gonna pop that bouquet garni out. I'm going to toss that, and that came strictly from Nene's garden. So I get my herbs from Nene's garden or Benita's garden. Shout out to them. And we're gonna place our roast onto a plate and let it rest, and then we're gonna go ahead, and while it's resting, we're going to go ahead and take our carrots out of that liquid and separate the two. And you can see how tender it is. All right, so we're going to place our carrots and onions into a pan, because I said we're going to use these ingredients. You see how we cooked them, but we left them whole, so they didn't disintegrate during the cook time. And then we're going to place them to the side, and then we're going to strain our liquid. And the reason I'm straining it, because I don't want no big pieces of like crud from the roast into this mix. So I'm just straining it because I wanted to kind of be completely smooth as possible. And I'm using not a fine mesh strainer, but you know, it got some holes in there, so some stuff did go through, but I just wanted to get the bigger particles out of there. And once we get to this point here, we're going to go ahead and add in the secret ingredient for me. Like I said, you can omit certain things, but I'll show you the secret ingredient here in a second. But I always take a giant piece of ice or something frozen just to get the excess oil off, so it won't be too greasy. But that's my secret ingredient right there, the roasted chicken base. Now this is going to give you a depth of flavor of no other. Like, you got all this big beef flavor, but this is what's going to separate your ordinary pot roast from a delicious pot roast, and that's just a flavor component that just takes it up another notch. So that's my cheat code to give you some really depth of flavor that just changed the game up when it comes to pot roast. And then we're gonna cut this in big chunky pieces. Try to go against the grain if possible, but even if you don't, this thing is so tender that it's gonna completely disintegrate and fall apart. So cut this thing up, and it's kind of hard to see the grain because of it's cooked, you know, so it's kind of hard to see the grain. But once you get that cut up, we're gonna go ahead and layer it into our pot roast pan. And we're going to go on with the beef first. And then, like I said, we're going to use those veggies. Sorry about that if you hear the baby crying. I'm actually rocking her right now while I'm doing voiceovers. And that's just the fatherly thing to do. So, yeah, if you hear her whining a little bit, sorry about that. But, you know, we're going to go ahead. We're going to layer it. And then we're going to pop our veggies on. We're going on with our veggies, which is our onions and carrots again, and we're just gonna layer this thing up like a trifle almost, but it's not a trifle. We call it a pot roast trifle. We're gonna layer it, and then we're gonna get some more beef on top of those carrots and onions, and then we're gonna finish lastly with the remaining carrots and onions. So like I said, we're layering it like a trifle, but it's just for presentation purposes, and everybody gets a piece of beef, and everybody gets a piece of carrot, and everybody gets a piece of onion. That's strictly why I do it this way, so everybody gets a piece of everything. And then we're going on with our good liquid. And I meant to say this earlier, but after you put that chicken base in that liquid, what you want to do is you want to place it on the stove and reduce it by half. So yeah, we're going to continue to go on with our liquid. Like I said, reduce that by half, and that'll be the perfect consistency. That'll be the perfect flavor to it. It just compresses all of the flavors, and it's just really good. So make sure you reduce that liquid by half. And this is just for dramatic effects, but like I said, it's pretty much done. You know, there you have it, man. The most perfect pot roast. And I went on with some parsley just for that color pop. So yeah, we're still layering the jus. So make sure you get all that good beef jus on all this beef. Like I said, it's incredible. It's seasoned to perfection. It got a depth of flavor from the roasted chicken base. Like, oh my goodness, this just like beef to the next level. And we did it in a crock pot, so that's just easy. So on this weekday, when school's starting back and parents, you need something to cook, you could pop this on in the morning before you leave the house, and then just go to work, come home, slice it up, and go ahead and layer it. And you got the beef, and all you have to do is make your sides. So this is a perfect recipe for the busy family, or the busy mother, or the busy father who trying to balance it out with school starting back, man. It's perfect crock pot recipe for you guys. I want to thank you guys for checking this video out. Like, comment, share, subscribe, man. The most incredible pot roast, crock pot roast, man, from the Bistro. I'm out.